was a better offseason point guard pickup? Was it 2022 Sky Clark, or was it 2025 Jalen Lowe? We discuss all that and more on the Starting 502 podcast. Presley Meyer, Alan Thomas, how we doing? We're not going to talk about Jalen Lowe tonight, but if you came for Jalen Lowe podcast, it's the third door on the right. But tonight we want to get into just a little bit of Louisville basketball, just for a few minutes. We had some technical difficulties, but we still want to get on here, have some fun with you guys. We want to chop it up just a little bit. Alan, state on a scale of 1 to 10 right now, where is your Louisville basketball fandom? Keeping in mind that we're recording 48 hours after whatever happened in TBT on Sunday.
Yeah, it's like that Sopranos scene where anybody that doesn't watch, I apologize, but where Carmine Jr., he says, whatever happened there, and then there's that meme where he's like, whatever, he blows off something that really was bad that happened, and then people in the meeting are like, oh, so yeah, that TBT loss that we got spanked at home, whatever happened there, we're not, go for it. I mean, I was gonna say we can recap that. I have no words for how we lost. It was just, I don't want to break it down and upset any players that might be watching this, because it's an alumni team, and I get it, and they'd probably kick my ass anyway in basketball. So it is what it is.
Oh yeah, well I would say they'd kick 99.9% of asses.
Yeah.
It just so happened that the asses in front of them just happened to be better asses than their asses.
There you go. How many times did Presley just say asses?
How about that? That's my analysis. I mean, look, I think that there's a few things that need to come into play, as we kind of just transition a little bit into some TBT talk here. I think that there was this luster to TBT the first time it happened. Number one, because right out of COVID, if you remember, harken back to COVID with me for just a second. Spring of 2021, Louisville's coming off of just missing the NCAA tournament. They hastily try to put together a TBT team, spearheaded by, why am I blanking on his name? Keith Otto. And everybody just kind of assumed it was going to happen. We knew nothing about this, right? Like at the time, TBT still growing, but college teams in TBT, it was very limited. I think you had Heim's Army at that time. I think you had Carmen's Crew. I think you had, who else were we missing? There's another big one, but you didn't have Kentucky, Louisville, Kansas and Kansas State, Texas. I'm just trying to think of. There's oodles and oodles of TBT teams that are associated with the alumni who play on those teams now. But just 3-4 years ago, that wasn't the case, and so we had this obsession with it, and it only grew when we were turned away. Right, the Ville wasn't allowed to play. Like he came up with his own team name and branding and everything. TBT was like, that's not how we rolled. That's not how we're doing it. We want the big name players involved in this, right? Like we're not bringing Louisville into this if we don't get Peyton Siva, Russ Smith, Montrezl Harrell, right? Like that's not what we do. Like the whole point of doing something like this is, if we do it, we're going to do it right. Not saying that it wasn't being done the right way. I'm just saying that was kind of the approach, right? We're going to do it in the most professional possible way, blow this shit out of the water. But it was only exacerbated by, we craved Louisville basketball so much at that time. We craved success so much. We'd been so many years without seeing them in the tournament. And then on top of that, Ryan McMahon joins, was it the Dayton team, right?
I don't know. I don't remember.
I think it was the Dayton Flyers team. And he went out and just lit it up. It was so much fun to watch. Yeah, it was like right after his career had ended.
Whoa.
And I would assume it was July-ish of 2021. And I think everybody looked at that and was like, this is like, all we had to watch at that point was Ryan McMahon and TBT and Donovan Mitchell in the playoffs. And that's it. That's what got us through that weird, not as weird as 2020, but substantially weirder than now summer. And so on the heels of that, then you have the Kenny Payne era, and that kind of ushers in this desperation, this need for just something positive in the offseason. And that's when
Yeah.
you get the first iteration of the Ville. And so while that was fun to watch in year one, they're knocked out early on some bullshit. You know, couldn't hit a free throw, couldn't make a layup to save their lives. Last year, you saw what TBT could be. The first iteration of the Kentucky team, you have whatever it was, 16,000 people or whatever it was,
So
13,
fun.
15,
Yeah.
16,000, whatever it was, at Freedom Hall with some just absolute, just rock star, with players that many of the fans in the audience idolized growing up, players that just brought us so many great memories. And it was just all the feels, right, on the heels of the Kenny Payne era. Louisville fans needed something positive in such a dramatic way. And I think last summer you saw what that could be. Entering this year, though, you're on the heel. It's changed, right? The thought process behind what TBT is, what it represents to us as a fan base, changed significantly because we're not craving that nostalgia anymore. Number
Yes.
one. Number
Yes.
two, there's just, I think last year you saw like you at least could observe as somebody you could know very little about basketball or about the players on the team, but the guys that you came to watch, Peyton, Russ, Montrez, Shane, a lot of these guys, like they are on the very, very tail end of what they can provide for a team like this.
Yeah.
And it really became more about the Chris Dows and the, oh gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on this guy's name, the guy from EKU. That
Mayo.
was just Nick Mayo. Thank you. That was just fantastic. And Montrez played kind of hurt last year. He did not look himself. At times I would even say was a liability. And so it was, I think this year was kind of like the year, right? You have like a legitimate like setup with a GM, a coach, and Luke Hancock. And I'm not saying that Mark Lieberman and everybody else involved didn't do a fantastic job in years 1 and 2. It's not what I'm getting at, but I'm saying everything seemed on point. And we talked about this last week, Alan, that this is, I mean, it was the most talented team in the tournament, bar none, right? And I there's not even, I don't even see how you could question that. Like it's, you had 8 guys that played in the NBA. Show me another team that had eight guys that played in the NBA. It's just not
Right.
there's just not that, right? But it didn't work out. No, it didn't come to fruition. What we were expecting to see, we saw for probably 2.5 quarters in game one. Game two came out the gates. It was a disaster. You're playing against a team that has won this in the entire thing. And then in the same team, most of the guys are on this team. You have Nick Coffey, who is a local connection, knows all these guys very well. You have a team that came out hungry because you beat them by 2 last year, and they were a 3-point shot away that they barely missed on from winning the damn thing last year. With all that in mind, it's the perfect recipe for you to lose, and that's what happened. I mean, they came out and got their asses beat from the first play of the game. Like they came out and it was clear as day. Sideline Cancer was the better team that day, and that's what it was. Like let's be honest about it. Like the Ville did not play well. They did not adjust well. There was some back and forth between a lot of teammates. There was a lot of aggression, and really it took the crowd kind of having to will the team back into the game. I don't know, Alan, thoughts? Sorry for the monologue, but thoughts.
No, I thought it was appropriate. You nailed every little pinpoint that every fan wanted to kind of hear somebody break down each piece of what happened, what went wrong, how did this train wreck even happen. And I can just add to it a little bit. Like you said, Sideline Cancer was incredibly underseeded, and they were without one of their better players. Definitely one of their better bigs, maybe their best big in our guy. Oh my gosh, Trey Moses. And so he wasn't playing that night. Like you said, I think they were underseeded. Another thing, and this is no excuse because Sideline Cancer did not get a break either, but Louisville had to play in games, back to back. Some other teams on the other side of the bracket did not have to do that. Again, I didn't use that excuse because the team that we faced didn't have a break either.
Yeah,
But
they had less time. They had
yeah,
less time to prepare.
yeah. So, but when you like we talked about last week, when you have age as kind of the de facto crutch, that if anything can bite this team, it would be Father Time. We discussed that last week. But when you don't have a full day, mind you, Trez, who played great against Sideline Cancer, played a game earlier that day, and then took a plane. Like he was basically on a plane, slept a little, probably woke up sore, did whatever remedy he could, probably in the morning, stretching and things like that to get ready, played a game, and then got on a plane and played another game. And
Mm-hmm.
I think he looks good, but you gotta think about defensively and just as the game goes on, what kind of wear and tear did that have? We didn't see any of Peyton Siva at all this tournament. I think he
Right.
was kind of put in there, and that was a guy that I thought might be a situational 3-point shooter, and I guess like either he decided or they decided like we just have him to fill the roster spot because they needed it because the TBT rules building a roster you have to have so many players at a certain time as the timeline goes on in order to
Sure.
participate you have to have players. Nobody knows that better than Keith Otto because that whole thing, like you were saying, that thing fell apart pretty quickly for him. Again, like he's the
Right.
pioneer of all this, and that's why I was really happy to see that he was actually a part of the staff still. Is that they keep him on because like if it
Right.
wasn't for him crawling, maybe none of this would have been running or jogging or whatever we did this year.
Mm-hmm.
I think last year we were running, but no, but so I'll kind of end it on no real hate or shade. I had a lot of like thoughts after the game. The loss to Sideline Cancer, where I was kind of like in my head, like, well, this person probably should have played less, or this person should have played more, blah blah. And then you listen to the radio, and you have guys on the radio saying, Rummage, who was on the sideline, kind of giving his tidbits after the fact, and he's like, hey guys, just to tell you, like, Jordan Morrow was going to play on this team. But then
Mm-hmm.
he ran into the thing where he's like, well, I have this deal, and I just can't play. It's like I can be here for it, but I can't risk because I have this deal. And there were some
Yep.
other guys that have deals on the horizon that were able to play just because it was far enough away that they were able to slide in and play. Then you had guys, like I said, like Trez, that were just playing in between because they wanted to. Now, guys like Earl Clark, maybe Trez, maybe Russ, just to name a few, Siva, this very well could be the last time we see them on the Ville. Maybe. And I'm not, it is what it is. I'm not going
Yeah.
to tell somebody what to do. Maybe they come on as legacy members and they come off and spell people, but I don't think, I think moving forward, you have to find, and we don't have a huge crop to go after because we had that period when TBT started where all these other guys have fresh people. So we had Kenny Payne players. Not that they were bad. Like we had some good guys. Like some guys that are from the Louisville area, JJ Trainer, and some others that could come back and still are
Mm-hmm.
good, but they might have deals. I think we
Sure.
look. I think we look young. In moving forward, we look to younger, and we look for just guys that can shoot the rock, man. Because that's one thing we have not seen on this TBT team. That's my from point zero to point 100 full reaction of the whole thing. And I thought you broke it down great. I was just kind of piggybacking off what you said.
Yeah. I think one thing that I'd say about Sideline Cancer and a lot of the teams that I've seen in this tournament, continuity is such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And while these guys know each other so well and they're a part of the fraternity of Louisville basketball forever, that doesn't mean that just because Peyton and Russ play together, that all of a sudden they're going to just be able to go out and just keep doing that
Mm-hmm.
over a decade later.
Yeah.
Just because you were one thing doesn't mean that you are that now. And just
Yeah.
because it works both ways, right? I think Chris Jones is in many ways a much headier, much more valuable player than he was in his career at Louisville. And
He's
I'm
still
not
so
saying that
good.
he's
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not saying that he's as good as he was then, right? Like, you lose your you lose a lot as you get older. Like time is undefeated,
Mm-hmm.
like we talked
Yeah.
about.
Oh yeah.
But I think trying to make all of this fit the right way at the and just try to balance everything that comes along with this is a lot more difficult than people want to give it credit for. And you
Mm-hmm.
could see, that sideline team, they were just much more comfortable playing together than
Mm-hmm.
the Ville team was. And I kind of went into it. I don't want to, harp on this or anything, but I mean, there was these guys on the Ville team, they really wanted to win, right? Like they really, really, really wanted to win.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point of like bickering and arguing with each other, to the point of, who gets to, take shots, who gets to get into the game, who's sharing well. I mean, but you could see it on these guys' faces. Like when that last shot went in, which of course it seems like every year has to end on some bullshit bank three,
I
right? But
know. Yeah.
when I was standing on the other end, but as soon as he shot that, I was like, he's about to bank this shit in,
Yeah.
like because it was way too hard. You saw it on the guys' faces, like Jay Scrub immediately, like there was no love lost, right? Like he's immediately going through the tunnel, taking chairs out along the way, like very displeased.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris Jones was very visibly upset multiple times during the game,
Mm-hmm.
at himself, at teammates. David Johnson took, I mean, I haven't even looked at the stat sheet, but what felt like 12 threes in the second half.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that should not go unnoticed is because they didn't play together, there's not a trust established in the sense that there's not going to be great ball movement.
Yeah.
It's very nails on a chalkboard to watch at
It
times
is.
because there's not a bunch of plays, there's not a bunch of set plays in their arsenal. There's not a lot of give and take. There's not a lot of trust. There's not a lot of passing the ball and knowing where another guy's going to be. There's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of out of rhythm shots being taken. There's a
Tons.
lot of possessions where Harrell gets the ball at half court and he's not sure where everybody else is going to be, so he's just kind of taking over and bullying his way into the lane and
Mm-hmm.
hoping he gets fouled. Which, by the way, TBT is some of the fouls that are not called are freaking hysterical.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there's dudes hanging on arms
Yeah.
as guys are going up for shots and nothing's called. Like
Yeah. We
it's
could do
very
we could do
much
a
like
full
schoolyard
we could do a half hour on that alone. I literally
on
break
just
it.
the officiating alone.
You
Yeah.
and I, the way we watch basketball, could break that down. Like, oh, it'd be like, oh yeah, I remember this one play, and literally talk about it. And I was like, yeah, I remember that one. Do you remember this one? For 30
Mhm.
minutes, easy. We're
It's
not
it's
going to, but we could.
very Yeah, and that's why this is the reason why I'd advocate for like a Chris Coffee on
Yeah, yeah,
on
yeah,
the team
yeah,
next year, if there's a team next year, right? Because you need a guy that's just an absolute bully, and that's what Chris Coffee is, right? Like
mm-hmm,
Chris Coffee, for those who don't know, played at Georgetown College, but his career has skyrocketed since
mm-hmm,
he has hit the pros. He's been fantastic, and if you don't know the connection to a current Louisville player, of Zugris, Louisville's current, probably second or third string big man, as recently as a couple of months ago, was Chris Coffey's backup. So that's kind of the connection there. They were sitting next to each other during game one. Obviously, like good friends, know each other well.
mm-hmm.
And Coffey he showed up and showed out, like he was balling.
Yeah,
But he's a guy that I wouldn't want to try to stop that guy. He has his handles under control, finishes well around the rim, has a full arsenal of moves that he's developed as he's become a pro. I mean, he's a hell of a player. He's a
yes,
hell of a player, and very fun to watch. But those are the types of guys that you need. You need a Nick Mayo. Would love to have Nick Mayo back.
yeah,
But that's the type of guys that you need. And then I think the other thing that you need, we talked about this, we alluded to this as we were previewing TBT, you got to have shooters. And I looked at
yeah,
this team. That's the number one thing that I would point out if there's a flaw of this roster assembly. Like, yes, David Johnson is a solid shooter. David Sloan in spurts can be a solid shooter. Obviously,
mm-hmm,
Malik Williams is a solid shooter as a stretch big. But I don't know how much you can play a guy like that in TBT because of his style of play. you just go down the list. Quinn is a solid shooter, but again, it doesn't feel like shooting is their strong suit. Like I'd love to have I don't think Ryan McMahon is ready to suit up again, right?
Yeah.
But maybe a Rain Smith, maybe a Jordan Wara. Those are the types of players that you'd like to see on this roster.
Yeah.
Um, we haven't mentioned it, but it's I think as the final kind of piece here, it's important to mention Earl Clark was not a part of the roster on Sunday. While Trez was able to fly up to Detroit on Saturday night, play that
Hmm.
game at 3 o'clock on Sunday, and then fly back down, was literally putting his shoes on as he was being announced in the starting lineups.
Yeah.
So that was a wild thing to watch.
Impressive.
Um,
Yeah.
Impressive, but Earl Clark was still up playing in a game in the big three. So would have been nice to have a guy like that. I'm probably the most bummed that we got like 8 minutes of Earl Clark because he fouled out
Yeah.
so quickly
Hmm.
in,
Yeah.
in the first game. So that's kind of my final thought on just roster assembly. Would love to see him again, but again, next year he'll be 38. Who knows? Who knows, right? I mean, look,
Yeah.
LeBron's 41 and he's not slowing down. So
Yeah. Yeah.
never say never, but I think he spends like $2 million on his body every year, also.
I've heard
Um,
that. Yes.
and then my kind of final takeaway overall, I think last year Trez I said was a bit of a liability. I think this year he was very clear cut, head and shoulders above everybody else, and
Yeah. He was the
especially in
number
game one.
one
And
option for
and
sure.
in game one, he was filthy. He was
Yeah.
unstoppable. He had a stretch where he scored like 10 out of the team's 12 points. He put that
Hmm.
thing way out of reach. He was fun to watch. He was in his bag. He was, I think, when you look at this roster, like I'm just looking at it's no shade at anybody, none of that, right? But like I just had all the names written down here. If
Hmm.
you look at Shane Bohannon, Earl Clark, Ray Spalding, who didn't end up
Yeah.
being a part of the team because of injuries, Malik Williams, Peyton Seaver, Russ Smith, you just Chris Jones, even you go down the list, and all of those guys are not as good as they were when you last saw them suit up for Louisville.
Yeah.
None of those guys are as good as they were. Now they may be more skilled in other areas, right? Like if you watch Peyton right now, I think that his ball handling and his court vision has never been better in his entire life. But his speed is obviously
Yeah.
not what it was, and that was his strength, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So you look at Montrezl Harrell and you compare Montrezl Harrell what he was in college, which was highly impressive. I mean, he was a fantastic player in college and
Hmm.
and a centerpiece for a really good squad when in their sole year in the American Conference. But
Yeah.
Montrezl Harrell was to look at who he was in his junior year of college to what he is now. You saw firsthand in game one on Saturday what kind of player he became, and it's a fucking fantastic player, Alan. I mean,
Yeah.
he like you cannot say enough great things about the way he played, and I thought that he came with something to prove, especially in that Saturday game.
Yeah, for sure.
And if things go differently, like if you don't come out and go down by 25 and be losing it by 21 at halftime, I think that you see that same sort of performance from Montrez in the second half. It just more became like they clawed their way back, shooting free throws and those sorts of things. But yeah, you give that guy some space. He's still filthy. He's a damn good player. So if there's
Yeah.
one like super positive silver lining, the fact that we got to see him at least one more time, forever grateful for that. So
I agree.
any final thoughts on TBT?
No, I mean, I think we, just in general, I can tell you that they're going to be looking at roster construction a little differently next year. I don't know that. I haven't talked to anybody about that. I didn't open that can of worms, but just knowing what we all saw and watched. I mean, one of our better big men was just unavailable the entire time. Ray
Sure.
Spalding. So like obviously our depth, and his isn't necessarily age. I mean, he could still play ball. He just was hurt, and then obviously like Earl Clark being unavailable. Just finding guys that it doesn't even have to be Louisville alumni. Like I'm looking around the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of the teams that are putting teams out are just a hodgepodge of like really good players that just keep coming back and like you're saying, playing on these that have played in the TBT for a few years now. Maybe they're getting older, maybe they're getting younger guys or random this and that. I saw where Jack Golke was on some team. It wasn't an Oakland team; it was just some random team that picked him up. I don't even remember which team it was, but I'm totally okay with. You don't have to find just kids that are from Louisville or the Louisville area. Just anybody that knows somebody. Like I'm okay with. I know Trey Moses is from Louisville, but maybe you get a guy like that and then get somebody that played on a team with him that is just electric. I mean, I'm open for just finding roster pieces at this point. Like I'm okay with putting away the legacy,
Right.
nostalgia a little bit. We've seen that, we've kind of done that. We play Cincinnati in Freedom Hall next year, so like we're gonna get to see Freedom Hall. We'll get to go back. I'm more interested in being whoever is in charge, Lieberman or whoever, Luke, being a GM and actually saying, okay, what do we need for this team? So that's my only thing. That's what I think
Yeah.
that's our next step.
Yeah, I'll kind of end it with this, Alan. I think that the most important thing that you could probably do is try to establish that continuity early and have 5, 6, 7 of these guys just running it back over
Mm-hmm.
and over again for 2 to 3 straight weeks in the Louisville area, right? So, like, I'm just sitting here just off the dome, just trying to come up with like, okay, could you assemble a team where you have a group of 6, 7 guys that call Louisville home base or that call this area somewhere close to your home base. Here's
Mm-hmm.
what I wrote down real fast. Rain Smith, we don't know what's going to happen with him, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he's bouncing around different NBA preseason rosters. Still very, very early on in his pro career. We'll see what happens there.
Mm-hmm.
Quentin Snyder, I know he
Yeah.
was supposed to be a part of Trey's game, and then something fell through. But could he be a guy that ends up being kind of based in this area? Jared West is and has been a part of this tournament for a while,
Mm-hmm.
but he's been a part of Best Virginia. But
Yeah.
we've seen guys trade teams all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So could he be a guy that could step in? Chris Coffey is a guy that I mentioned. If I'm drafting guys from other teams, he's one of my top like must-haves. You mentioned Trey Moses. I think that'd be a great ad. I think he's going to do fantastic for them when they suit up on Wednesday night. That's just off the dome, right? And if
Yeah.
you throw in a couple of talented pieces, I think that continuity we're seeing more and more is the most important piece of this. So
Mm-hmm.
speaking of continuity, Louisville's current roster, it's established. Everybody's here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go. The 2025-26 season is officially starting to unfold. We're seeing that. First of all, shout out to the current team. The entire section behind the basket, I
At
guess
TBT.
one half of an entire section at TBT was Louisville's entire team
Yeah.
in their SIGOTs if they had one, and the training staff and Johnny Kelsey, the entire manager team. That it was 100% all the current team. They are
Yeah.
all into the game, like they are living and dying by every play. They're standing up, which is very inconvenient for a 5'9" man standing right behind them. Um,
I hear you.
they are invested. They're already starting to click. Super excited about what this roster could look like. But I think there's such an underrated conversation right now out there that surrounds Louisville's big men.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there are some intriguing conversations on just what the ceiling could look like for Louisville's front court this year, and want to just take a second to talk about it. I was just going to say really quickly. You look at the way that this roster has been assembled. You get Case and Pryor back. I think for all intents and purposes, unless something happens, unless there's some sort of setback, Case and Pryor is your starter at center. But I think pushing him right behind him is Sananda Frew. We can get into that in a little bit. We've seen a lot of Vinjalis Zugris. Like, that's going to be a guy that I think it's hard to keep his energy off the floor. And then you throw in a Mo Kamara, who he's been he's been making a lot of the offseason highlight reels, and
Yeah.
then Javon Hadley obviously returns. That is a formidable front court, right? I mean,
Yeah.
hell, throw everybody else out for a second. A small ball lineup with Javon Hadley at either the 4 or the 5. That
Yeah.
intrigues me.
Yeah.
I'm really interested to see what this could look like.
Absolutely. I have curiosities about Cason Pryor and how he's going to come back all the way. I know they have him working out. I haven't really seen him, 100% or doing things 100% all the way through the motions in these little videos. Again, this is all we have to go off of, so I think they put it out there so that media and fans can react to the little clips and things like that, which brings me to Mo Kamara. Maybe one of the more, they opened the video with this guy coming in the lane, tomahawk, and Pat Kelsey's notorious for energy. So these practices, every time we see videos, you hear guys going like screaming of whether if it's a block, it's oh, and if it's a dunk, it's hey, like it just constant which a lot of practices were like that, but maybe not on this level. But they opened videos like a week or two, and Mo Kamara's coming down the lane, tomahawk jam, everybody goes nuts. And then they go on to some other things, and they show players that we want to see. Okay, how did he move in this 2 seconds of clip? When he's coming through the lane or whatever. But I think my overreaction, maybe of the off season, is that I know how good this team is. I know defensively how good a lot of these guys are. I think some maybe need more work. Michael Brown, things like that. He's young. He'll get there. But you got to think, Mo Kamara is out there. Either the person guarding him in that video, I don't remember, but it had to have either been Javon Hadley, Zugris, or Sananda Fru. Had to be, right? And so everything that we know about the team that we have now, our full roster going in the 25-26 year, and all of the tape that we've watched, and I watched a lot more after I saw that video that Louisville men's basketball put out on Twitter, on social media altogether. So I watched a lot more, and it's funny how it just kind of there's a chain reaction going on inside my brain, because when I first watched this guy's clips, I'm like, man, he's so raw, and he needs to protect the ball more. And I'm like, God, what is he doing? He's just going, he's just like, okay, he ripped the ball away, and he's just going to go in for that dunk. What? Like in NBA Africa over there. And I'm like, he's not going to get away with that in Division I at a high level. And I know this team is going to be at a high level. I know this is a top 5, team, fringe top 5 at worst, to open the season. So I'm like, there's no way he's going to get stuffed on the bench, and he's going to just have to learn, to rein it in a little bit, buddy. This is not as free flowing and crazy of a game tempo as NBA Africa on tape anyway. It's, a lot of those plays are just insane. Maybe it's defensive shortcomings or whatever over there. Maybe it's just guys, most of them are raw over there. A lot of talent, a lot of raw talent. So me seeing that in a practice, at first I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'm like, oh, who is that? Oh, that's cute. Who's that? Oh, it's Kamara. Oh, crap. And then I start to think about all the clips I watched of him doing that at NBA Africa. And then I start going through NBA Africa, looking at some of the rosters and some of the prospects on these teams. Not necessarily that he's dunking on these guys or whatever, but there's a lot of talent over there that's coming up, that's going to start making its way to the States and just making its way overseas into professional leagues and stuff. Not all of them have to play Division I basketball. But my overreaction, that brings me to my overreaction of the offseason, is that Mo Kamara, I think he's going to start a couple games this season. I say that because on tape, defensively, I don't know that anybody can protect the rim like him that we have. I think Sananda Fru is exceptional, but I don't think Sananda Fru is athletic as Mo Kamara. Now, athleticism and raw athleticism, whatever, we can have that debate all day. I just think that, and either I'm dead wrong, and that was the only highlight he had of the entire 2-week practice, and they're like, we got to put it in here just to make people excited, or I think, why wouldn't you stuff that highlight in the middle of the video and say, oh, look at Kamara getting up? Or is that the coaching staff or the video staff or, people getting together saying like, hey, we need to let people know this guy's, better than people think he is, or he's going to do more than people think. Another reason is I know Pat Kelsey likes to play with lineups when he thinks He has now. Last year he really couldn't, but even still, you had different starting lineups with 8, 9 guys total. I think he's going to go really deep, and I think he's going to be able to, even if it's a game that's a non-con at the beginning, or like one of the gimmies, the pay games, or what have you, or if it's a lower end conference game. I think Mo Kamara starts. I think the over under is 2. I would take the over of 2. Starts over 2 games.
Wow.
2.
Wow. So I'm just looking over what this roster looks like in the front court, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but there are 2 names that I just left out. Like I'm just sitting here listing names, right? So
Mm-hmm.
Kenai Roos and Ali Khalifa. Like we
Yeah.
haven't even talked
Yeah.
about, like
Mm-hmm.
their names weren't even mentioned.
Allie, yeah.
And
What are we doing? Yeah.
that's 2 guys that could start games, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I look across this roster and I just think about what these guys bring to the table, I'm trying to figure out who's going to get these minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like
Yeah.
Scott Satterfield. I want to know who's going to get these balls. I want to know who's going to get these minutes.
Yeah.
And the 2 names that stand out to me, and look, it's not any shade being thrown. I just think that if you're assembling this roster, I think that these are 2 guys that you bring in because of their intangibles in different ways than what they can provide on the court on, whatever it is, November 5th, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it. And I think the 2 guys that stand out is guys that I think that they'll play. I just don't see them getting like starter minutes, or like I'm just trying to as quickly as possible rule out players. I think it's Mo Kamara and Vangelis Zugras. I think those are the 2 guys that you see among this kind of underrated, sort of loaded front court. I think those are the 2 guys that get the least amount of minutes. And I know that sounds crazy, but just stick with me for a second, right? So if you just look at returners, right, you have Kaysen, Pryor, and Javon Hadley. Like those are guys that we know for a fact are getting minutes. Javon Hadley, outside of Chucky Hepburn, played the most minutes last season.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, like he played the most minutes on average, right? Like it's not just he just stayed healthy. Like he played a lot of freaking minutes, Alan.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard to keep a guy like that off the floor. A 5th-year senior, a guy that's been through it all. He's coming back for year 2 in Pat Kelsey's system. He can play so many different spots. Like it's not outrageous to say that Javon Hadley could play the 2 if needed.
Yeah.
Not outrageous at all. I mean, he did last year, right? Like when you have Chucky Hepburn go down, like you don't really have options. You have Raiden Smith, and Terrence Edwards, and then you have Javon Hadley. Like that's really it. You're not putting in walk-ons. That's a guy that could play the 2, but at the same time, you saw that he can thrive at the 5.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like that's a guy that he's going to warrant minutes. He's a good defender. He's he doesn't get enough credit for how good of a shooter he is. He's a fantastic rebounder. He rebounds way above his size. Like this is a guy. Like this is. If you look at on paper, Javon Hadley's your best returning player.
Oh yeah.
And I'm not saying that he is the best returning player, but I'm saying if you just look at it on paper, he got the most minutes. He had the most versatility shown and ability to just stuff a stat sheet. He is a fantastic rebounder. Like he and Pryor are neck and neck for your best returning rebounder.
Oh sure.
Like it's really hard to see. I know that Javon Hadley is not going to play the minutes he did last year, just because of the depth you have on this roster. And when he comes back, like, I think that's part of the conversation. Like, hey, you're not getting 36 minutes in probably any game this year. But like, it's hard to keep him off the floor, right? And then obviously Kaysen Pryor, barring like any issues, like I still think that's if that's not your starting center, he's your starting 4. Like I think Kaysen Pryor is in the starting lineup. And obviously, most importantly, he's probably in your finishing lineup. Right? Like that's a guy that you need on the floor down the stretch, in my opinion. But then you throw in Sananda Frew, who I think is the single most underrated player on this team. Sananda Frew, he could be a draft pick next year. Like I'm not trying to like dick around and just like you just say stuff that's just gonna be hyperbolic and get people hyped up. Sananda Frew is the real freaking deal, man. Like he is the real deal. He has the requisite size of an NBA big man. He's 6'11", every bit of 240, 250. His leaping ability, his lateral quickness, his defensive ability, his ability, if he can improve and stretch the floor like Kaysen can, like, I don't know how you keep this guy off the floor either.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, people are sleeping on Sananda Frew just because they don't know the name and haven't seen him play, like, American basketball. I think it's going to take a little bit for him to adjust. Like, I think you might see some early adjustments needing to be made, just adjusting to the American game. Like, I could see Sananda Frew being a guy that gets in a lot of foul trouble early in the season, having to adjust. There's just certain rules in the way that things are played, and I just couldn't think more highly of a guy like Sananda Frew. And I think he's going to be a huge, huge, huge piece of this roster. But then you look at a guy like Ali Khalifa, right? So now Ali Khalifa's back, and not to go on some tangent or anything, but like, he's got a bone to pick with a lot of people. He absolutely worked his ass off, literally and figuratively, to get back out on the court. And I think he's going to be an instrumental piece on this roster as well. I mean, you're talking about one of, if not the best passing big men in the country, right? Like, that's hard to pass up. And then finally, I look at Kenai Roos. I look at Kenai Roos was absolutely, he was a glue guy in a lot of situations last year. I think that we forget about how valuable he was and how reliable he became. I think that you just need to see that consistency. He lacked that consistency as a shooter on the back half of last season. And then what you saw was he became a player that you couldn't have on the floor as much because he wasn't versatile enough. And that's my concern as we go back to full circle now, back to Kamara. My number one concern about Kamara is, how do you find minutes for this guy on the floor? Because I'm not sure that he provides the versatility that the rest of these guys that we just mentioned do. I think that the issue with Kamara is, yes, he has demonstrated the ability, it seems, to be a really solid defender. He can defend probably all 5 positions, but where is he on offense, and where does he fit among the hierarchy of this roster? I think that I look at Zugris and Kamara as the future for this roster, and then you surround them with different pieces as we're going forward. With different transfers, or maybe as you're bringing in a couple of freshmen next year and the year after. So those are kind of my thoughts on what the big man situation could look like for Louisville basketball this year. It's nothing against Zug, too, because, like, I love the dude's energy. Zug is, I need to see him unlock a different part of his game. This is a guy, like, now that I've seen him in person just a little bit, Zugris is, I want to say that Zugris is 6'7". I think that's a solid estimate. And this is a guy that they're seeing as a guy that could absolutely be a 5 for them, right? Like, I think that they see him as a center. So that's one concern of mine. Like, I mean, there have been big men in the past that have thrived as undersized big men. I mean, look at like a Shane Bohannon. I think that's a great example. I think he's 6'5.5", 6'6", and he was fantastic in the low post. But is that how Pat Kelsey wants to play? Like, are you going to play him as the 4? I don't know. I really appreciate and love you, and we're so glad to have you on. So glad to have these listeners here. We're just spreading the gratitude, because it is, now that TBT's over, now that we're like in the thick of like football preseason, that means like the conversation is really ramping up for college basketball season.
Oh yeah,
like we are, we're almost to August. Which means that we're almost to September. And then once we get to October, you know what that means? Louisville plays a scrimmage against
Kansas.
They play a scrimmage against Kansas in October. Like, that's how close we are.
Yeah.
Like, we're at the very end of July, August, September. Once you get to October, you were in basketball month. Like, we're that close. We're that close, Alan.
3 months, 2 days. 3 months, 2 days. Yeah.
Something of that nature.
Something like that.
He's Alan Thomas. Make sure you give him a follow at Cardin Al. The Twitter gods, back when, I think before Elon owned it, they kicked him off and he had to make a new Twitter account. So go follow him, because he's relatively funny on most nights. Make sure you follow us
at the State of Louisville.
Exactly. Exactly. And depends on what you think about life. Yeah, if you're a Nazi UK fan, you're gonna have a bad time.
Period.
You can follow me at Press Meyer. I don't know. I'm on there sometimes on all social media platforms. You can follow us, of course, at the State of Lou everywhere. And like I said, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Go riz up the like button. Until next time, let's get out of here. Go Cards, starting 502 podcast.